All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bella Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello.
And it has been a minute, mostly due to the fact that sorry, moving my camera there. Summer is busy. It's a busy time, especially for families, and so I've been busy. Also, I've just been getting a crazy amount of dental work done recently, which has accounted for probably half of the recent episodes we've missed. But today we're going to be talking about Gencon, which was kind of a very mild, I guess it depends on which game you like. If you're a Daggerheart fan, big Gencon. If you're a D&D fan, big Gencon. But for general TTRPGs, kind of pretty mild. But there are some really interesting things to talk about. And as well, the TTRPG scene is really starting to take off in a lot of ways. So we're going to be talking about that all today. But before we do, small talk as usual. So Alex, what have you been up to since we last were live?
Man, oh man, I have been busy. Where on one hand, it is related to this. I'm not gonna make a video on it because I just don't think outside of Table Talk I'm the fella to go real deep and make a whole video on the brand new fun 6th edition vampire stuff. Largely because like my takeaway is very much all right, I don't know, it could be fun. I think some of the stuff looks cool, but because I don't have any like real insight, critical insight, it's not something I'm gonna make a video on. But also, I am in absolute productive mode because I need to get a Demon the Fallen video out, hopefully in like this week. I want to put it out as soon as possible. Is it to beat one of the bigger World of Darkness creators to the punch to make a Demon the Fallen video? Maybe. But also I've been procrastinating on it and I want to get it out. But it's been fun. Demon the Fallen is such a goofy setting, goofy game. Quite honestly, going as deep as I did research-wise and everything, I think Demon the Fallen is probably one of the best executed concepts World of Darkness has made, like, of their career. It is to like that extent. I think it is a genuinely well orchestrated idea, but with so much jank too, man. The best way to describe it is picture a World of Darkness campaign where you're essentially playing like kind of like superhero level tier shit, where nothing is like really a threat to you, but it's also trying to be a gritty kind of personal story, which the overall story of Demon the Fallen is ancient celestial beings trying to get over their millennia's long PTSD. Like, that is the concept.
Yeah.
It's cool, but man, it is like the other way I describe it is hurt people, the game. That is kind of the idea.
Yeah.
Just with demons and early, like, 2003 Edge added to it.
Yeah. As far as myself, like I said, a lot of dental work. My mouth has been in consistent pain, and I had to suddenly get a root canal, which was not fun. Still clearing some stuff up. Hopefully we're almost out of the woods. Got like one more thing I got a cap put in, game put in for, or a crown being put in for the root canal soon, and then I got another thing that I'd like them to look at, but hopefully that's done soon. As well, it is, my mom is getting up here, but like there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be settled. My grandmother's not doing well, and she's pretty much being put into respite care for end of life, so that's been hard. It's been a rough year for my mom. Both her parents will probably be passing this year, so when she gets up here though, then we'll have someone watching my daughter more frequently, and then I can take more time to make content. Honestly, I have been making content, just not on the YouTube side of things. I've been making stuff for our Beast Taming Legend of the Mist game, and as well I've been working on the rule set for the 333, because we had a rule breakthrough, and you'll love it, Alex, because I've added fun dice mechanics to the game.
Love
those. Which is really interesting. Also, I've done this very interesting thing with the system that is, it's like using advantage, but not in the normal way, and it uses, you know, like tiered successes, you know, like partial success, full failure, all that kind of stuff. It's got some really interesting stuff. It's very similar to how it was played before. There's still the higher your attribute, the higher the die you roll kind of thing. But now I'm just adding dice. Like, now there's proficiency dice, and then there's this new set of dice we call interference dice, where you roll additional dice for a myriad of things, whether it's to earn better successes or whether it's to get more punch out of the things you use the dice for in the first place. Like guns, some guns use interference dice to increase damage rather than to increase your chance to hit. So a lot of really fun stuff, and it's been really fun on that end of things as well. I've been doing my best to be apprised of all the stuff going on in tabletop. It's so strange being a tabletop content creator, because there is this kind of level of, like, the best example I can make is Daggerheart swept the Annies, right? If you're unfamiliar with the Annies are kind of like the tabletop awards. Mostly they rely on the indie scene. They don't really do much when it comes to like the big ones. Daggerheart kind of still counts in that regard, but it's something that is just a fun thing. It's not really meant to be taken too seriously. Daggerheart swept this year, but something that people aren't talking about is in many of the categories that Daggerheart won, Legend of the Mist came second.
And like, not even to be mean to some of the indie games, it's just like the names of the games I heard of was like, I knew what Daggerheart was, and then I knew what Legend of the Mist was. But like, it's indie, smaller release, so it doesn't surprise me that Daggerheart, with the most recognition, at least won. I'm happy that Legend of Mist is a big runner-up, because I think it deserves it.
Yeah, because Daggerheart got Best Game, followed by Legend in the Mist, as well as Best Rules, Daggerheart, followed by Legend in the Mist. But everyone's talking about Daggerheart winning, but no one's talking about Legend in the Mist, which just really shows that, like, people only really care about the things that, you know, the big ones. And Daggerheart is definitely now really starting to step into the scene as D&D's competitor. And on a numbers on a number side of things, that's super not true. But on like a public facing side of things, it's taking more of the zeitgeists away from like some of the other games. And it's also an interesting year because, you know, like Pathfinder has been, they took an L and then they've managed to claw it back a little bit, but Pathfinder's just still been hurting real bad and they haven't really done much. I haven't gotten my book yet for the Impossible Magic, but there are some really cool things there. But yeah, so it's, like I said, I looking into Gencon is so interesting because in prior years, tabletop was a much bigger aspect to it, like even last year. And this year, it kind of just feels like the Daggerheart and D&D show, because D&D also got a bunch of stuff that we'll end up talking about today. But there's still a lot of stuff going on in the TTRPG scene, like underneath the surface. So, you know, we'll talk about that. And yeah, I don't know. Other than that, small talk wise, I mean, if you haven't checked it out already, please check out our Beast Tamers live play, because I feel like, one, it's just fun. What we've been doing has been a lot of fun. If you're not into live plays, you're not going to like it, obviously, but It is the game we've been playing has been a lot of fun. The players have been having lots of fun with it, and mechanically speaking, it's probably one of the most interesting TTRPGs I felt like I've run in a while. It's just been really fun, and been playing more Legend of the Mist / Lore of the Mysteries in my free time. It's so fucking good. Oh man, we're gonna have to run Lore of the Mysteries for everyone because I think you guys would really like it. The different pathways and sequences just allow you to play a lot of different characters, and just the how the setting works and how you would go from like low sequence to high sequence is inherently fun gameplay-y, and there's lots of room for very interesting narratives when you're just dealing with steampunk eldritch horror, which is just fun, and esoteric mysticism. That's kind of like a huge part of it, as well as lots of mysticism mixed in with eldritch horror and everything like that.
I recognize little bits of stuff from my own obsession with that history of esotericism, and it really does seem like it's a big crossover between just Hermeticism and like a lot of like cultivation or Eastern like spirituality stuff. Which like my strong suit is Hermeticism, because like that's just very fun, and it's what we consider Western magic and alchemy. And I know alchemy seems like it's a very big concept in that world.
Kind of. Like you drink potions to go up to your next sequence. So like alchemy, you could say, features in that way, but it's not a huge thing. There are alchemists, and there are like a variety of elixirs and stuff, but like the only way alchemy really plays a core aspect is just you brew a potion to make your next sequence potion. But in all honesty, you get a grocery list of ingredients, you throw it all into a pot, and then you go from there. There's not a lot of extra science that goes into it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, but I think the most interesting thing is the power set, because a lot of the powers range from just real weird to very straightforward. Booter is playing a secret supplant / listener pathway, and he's got one of those pathways that are dog water early, because it gives you some of the craziest stuff later if you don't go insane. Because the first sequence is secret supplant, where you have to do rituals to typically hidden existences, which is very scary because they're not good. Usually they will just like, oh, someone's got my attention, I'll take that soul. It's so nice of them to just walk right up to me. That almost happened. He had to supplicate to another existence, and that existence saved us for an absurd amount of money that we're still paying off as a debt currently. And then that same entity has then used that debt as a weapon against Booter's character to make us do another mission pretty much like pro bono. So it's that's been really fun. And then he turned into a listener, and listener digest their potion through the act of listening to maddening whispers. So they have to go to places where some kind of madness is going on, and then they need to listen to the maddening whispers, not go insane, and then they get to digest their potion. And then his next sequence is really cool, though. It's shadow aesthetic, which is he gets shadow powers. He can summon shadow demons and blend into shadows and do all kinds of really cool stuff.
Yeah, the hype shit.
Really cool stuff. And he's also he's sequence 6, or no, not 6, 5 is Shepherd, which you just get to consume the soul of other Beyonders and then use their powers. And it's really strong, but you have to go through some of the hardest sequences in order to get that far. So it's really fun. There's all kinds of them. Hunter is really interesting, because you go from a hunter to it's not instigator, but something like that, where you can make people pissed off and target you and do all kinds of stuff like that. And then you go to pyromancer and you get fire magic on top of extreme physical capabilities and all that kind of stuff. So like a lot of the pathways are very strange, and if you read Lore of the Mysteries or Circle of Inevitability, though I recommend definitely going from Lore of the Mysteries to Circle of Inevitability, it makes it more fun. But I feel like even people who don't know anything about the setting would find the game super interesting, because it's a world that's just full of stuff to explore, and it's very well written. There's all kinds of really interesting rules for it, and Legend of the Mist is one of the best systems for it because everything is just context based. So, you know, whether your Marauder ability to mislead people by stealing their attention, you know, how it works would be harder in other games. When this game's just like, oh yeah, you want this thing to happen? Boom, just add up your tags and roll for it. I think you would like Marauder, Alex. It's one of the, it's one of the most JoJo-esque ones, because some of their endgame stuff is literally just how do they use the concept of stealing in weird ways, like stealing the distance between you and a target to teleport effectively.
Well, that's just part 8 JoJo.
Yeah.
That's just Soft and Wet. That's all he does.
Yeah.
Soft and Wet has plunder, and he shoots a bubble and he steals it. And one of the first things he does is steal the friction from the ground. Like,
yeah,
he steals friction, he steals eyesight. He can physically steal or conceptually steal.
Yep. And that's what Marauder does pretty much. So
that's pretty fun.
Yeah. Marauder's sequence 1 or 0, I can't remember, is glitch. I won't say more on it, but that should tell you what this sequence is all about. It's mostly just about breaking the rules and finding the loopholes in reality.
I do like the idea of that.
Yeah.
But more like, I like the idea of some form of character that relies on like the parts of where reality like kind of fucks up, yep, or kind of weakens in some aspect, and finding those like exploits is really fun. Because like the first thought I have is like, imagine a guy who there's the whole concept of quantum tunneling, where yep, there is an infinitesimally small chance if you try to put your hand through a wall, all the molecules and atoms will be aligned in such a way for your hand to go through it. And so a guy who's like, well, yeah, I actually can do shit like that. Like, that sounds kind of fun.
That's literally, you would love Amon in Lore of the Mysteries, because that's literally his whole thing.
I think my plan is like, if I can get a good convenient way to read it on my phone, because it's like that's its vibe, right? It's like not a light novel, but it's like a
it's longer than the Stormlight Archives.
Yeah, like if I can have a convenient way to read it on my phone, because like once I finish JoJo right now, which like I'm on part 7, I got like 2 parts and one of them's not finished yet. I plan to pick up and try Lord of the Mysteries.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna recommend the audiobook series on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, no.
Yeah, no, they don't have one on Spotify. I would literally listen to Lore of the Mysteries again if they came out with an official audiobook. I think one will come. I really do. Like, Lore of the Mysteries has become more and more popular and is starting to bleed into Western culture. I would say it'd be like no less than 5 years before at least the first book comes out in audiobook.
I mean, yeah, we'll see an MMO soon, which like that looks interesting. I like the idea of at least what they've shown of a risk and reward for your actual character's life. I think that's kind of interesting of a mechanic. Yeah,
I think I don't know. I don't think it's gonna live up to the setting in the game and the books, but it'll be fun. I'm going to check it out. I have to. I am such a huge Lore of the Mysteries nerd at this point, and playing Lore of the Mysteries co-op with Booter has been some of the best tabletop I've done in a long time. It's just been really, really fun. So, but all right, let's talk about Gencon. And let's talk about TTRPGs in general. So first and foremost, let's just talk about the Dragon game to get it out of the way. Dungeons and Dragons is doing the Magic thing. They're throwing popular IPs into the setting and seeing what sticks. And a lot of people are very mixed on it because on one hand, World of Warcraft is coming to D&D, which is fascinating to me because World of Warcraft is effectively based on D&D.
Yeah, it is like World of Warcraft as a game is very much a rip of a lot of like normal fantasy D&D stuff and like Warhammer fantasy. So like it's melding two things because that's just how Blizzard did it and does it. They really like the yank and twist idea. Because like the original Warcraft RTS games came out, I think a little bit after the Dawn of War games came out for Warhammer. But yeah, like it's one of those announcements that I saw and was surprised it didn't happen earlier. Like this is the first time because it feels like kind of an obvious supplement that would happen.
I mean, I don't know what was required to get the World of Warcraft IP, so that might have been a factor. But it's Hasbro; they have infinite money. But D&D isn't one of their cash cows, so
yeah, like because we've seen like a bunch of other D&D supplement stuff. Like I mean, fucking Doctor Who has one.
Mm-hmm.
And Doctor Who, like, there's a Lord of the Rings supplement for it. There's like, I mean, the one that annoyed us was when Adventure Time, had like it just switched to be like, all right, it's gonna be like a 5e D&D.
Yeah. So that's one that I'm more interested in. Star Wars is also coming to D&D, and I think that is the opposite of what I like. World of Warcraft, I'm interested in, intrigued in. Star Wars, it's like there's already such a really good system. Like, I gotta say, the Genesis engine is really interesting, and I think it, if anything, having Star Wars kind of being the premier like setting for the Genesis engine is, you know, it's a good place to sit. It's a good place to be. And to be fair, it's not making money in Genesis, unfortunately, because marketing is a huge aspect to it. And Genesis is also just an engine that requires a lot of creative skill from the GM and the players. And
and like
it's not casual.
This part is me being a little more uninformed on it. But I also thought for a chunk of it, like Fantasy Flight as like a company kind of went defunct. Or at least like isn't as prominent as it used to be.
Yeah, they've had a lot of problems because they were like purchased and then all kinds of stuff. So that's a little bit less fortunate because I don't know. I mean, it's a bit hypocritical to be like, ooh, World of Warcraft, that might be interesting, and then be like, or Star Wars, meh. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel similarly, because like it's the issue we all kind of have with D&D, which is playing any type of game instead of like a game built for it. Because Star Wars is that example of, I think like the Genesis system, and then with Star Wars, that game when I've played it felt like Star Wars. I think it mechanically was like really interesting. The way Star Wars as a universe works, I think flows really well with what that like engine does. A bit more than D&D, which, because like I've seen people talk about the like, oh, we're doing Universe Beyond but for D&D and being upset about it because like they're making it equivalent to Magic the Gatherings.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with that. Because like the difference is that a lot of the people who have an issue with a Universe Beyond for Magic are upset that like the original stuff for Magic the Gathering and its lore and stories are being sidelined, and now you're playing a game with your cool Jace deck, and then it's like, go Spider-Man with my Little Pony attachment. Like that's the thing they have an issue with, and it's not going to happen for D&D because Hasbro isn't forcing Star Wars content into your home gritty like dark fantasy game.
Well, kind of. I mean, on the Magic side of things, right? Magic has spent a long time developing a very interesting lore and like multiverse and everything like that. And the Universes Beyond has cheapened it because, you know, there's nothing more immersion breaking than playing like your favorite war game, for instance, and then someone comes in. It's like playing Warhammer and then someone comes in with their Looney Tune army, and it's just like,
Oh yeah,
damn, that feels bad. D&D, I feel like it's not bad because I'm going to be super honest, most of the people who play D&D super regularly don't care about the innate setting of D&D. Some may care about the vibe, and I completely understand that, right? The vibe of
yeah.
D&D, that classic fantasy RPG style, I get that, and for people who are upset about that, I get it. But like D&D's main player base is the super casual base, people who just want to like engage with the hobby on a surface level to play their favorite fantasy thing. And so I think, in my opinion, this is not a bad idea, because one of the fun parts of TTRPGs is getting to play in new settings and play as new kinds of characters and do things. And what's ironic is people, especially casual people, are going to know more about these new like World of Warcraft, Star Wars settings than they do about Faerun and the original Star or D&D fight setting. So it's ironic, but I think in a way it's a good move, because you're gonna have people who have make more informed characters and world building and designs that are just going to match effectively what D&D has become. And like it's great that Wizards has kind of doubled down on what D&D has become for people, which is just the, all right, you want to play any kind of setting in this game? Here, well, let's release some official content so you get some interesting stuff. If you like Star Wars, you have this new set of books that you can look into, and new art and all kinds of stuff like that. But also like provide actual support for people who wanted to play that kind of stuff in D&D anyway.
Yeah.
Still going to step on the toes of people who are purists in the idea of what D&D is. And those people are going to be super upset at this, even though they don't even play D&D anymore. Or if they do play D&D, it's not D&D anymore because they've homebrewed the crap out of it to make it something it isn't.
Which, like, that is just where I stand. Because, like, I saw the backlash to it when it happened. But the backlash I saw was less people. And granted, these are just, like, people I came across on Twitter, the worst place ever. But, like, because I understand if someone is upset or, like, I just don't like this. That's not what I want D&D to be releasing. And then there's the legitimate complaint of, I like core D&D stuff. I want that to be incentivized and released. I don't want, the next big IP to get dropped. The parts I don't agree with as much, with like some of the criticisms I've had, and I think they're just kind of wrong, is when it is a game like Magic the Gathering, maybe a war game or something, that is where someone shows up with a very immersion breaking thing. But like, unless your party and your GM and your table agree with it, can't really roll up to your game and you're like, all right, we got our cool, like, we're playing in Faerun, we got this. What are you playing? I'm gonna play a Jedi.
Right, yeah.
Well, no, you're not. Like, you can't do that equivalent. And because of that, these supplements you can ignore. In the same way that, like, you can ignore all the older supplements that have been made for 5th edition D&D. For like all the crossover content that's been done, because like not everyone's out here trying to run the cool unique stuff built for Doctor Who, but there's more Fantasy Alliance stuff where people can pull from and re-aesthetic, like the Magic the Gathering crossover that happened a while ago with D&D, which added like some fun subclasses and like concepts, some genuinely kind of cool stuff, and I've seen people pull that because you can reflavor it. Well, maybe that'll happen with Star Wars, or that'll happen with, like, Warcraft. I think it's more likely with World of Warcraft. But, I mean, it's the same thing that's going on right now, because my game, Vampire the Masquerade, has an official D&D crossover. And, man, oh man, what a class the Kindred class is. Nothing screams like vampiric celerity like standing still and multi-attacking, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've read a summary of this stuff that is actually in it, because basically it is a kindred class and your subclass is like your clan with like 4 choices. You have some powers and disciplines you can use, but like essentially you have a separate mana pool to do spell effects because it's blood points and they cost different numbers based on what you're doing. But it is if you want to play Vampire the Masquerade in D&D and it doesn't feel like Vampire the Masquerade, it's very combat focused. You can do it. Wow. It's not anything that people are like excited and freaking out over. It's just one of those bits people read and are like, yeah, wow, that's vampire. Or at least those are vampire terms on a D&D class.
Yeah. Also D&D is releasing Dark Sun, which is a huge one. Though it's so interesting because Dark Sun is effectively what OSR kind of tries to be, or like many of the Conan Exile based TTRPGs and stuff like that. If you're unfamiliar with Dark Sun, it's mostly just like a hostile towards magic kind of post-apocalyptic type setting. There's a lot more nuance to it, but that's the broad strokes. Using magic in this setting is very bad, and the world got ruined because of magic, so there's not a lot of magic going on, and it's going to sell, and it's going to sell probably pretty okay, despite the people who are probably going to buy it mostly getting it and hating it because it's not actually like OSR style gameplay that they liked the original Dark Sun in. So, wah. But D&D is, I think D&D is doing exactly what they should be for what kind of product they're producing. I think we need to stop kidding ourselves and thinking that D&D is a deep, immersive tabletop experience. It's not. It's not designed for the hardcore gamers. It is a shallow, play your favorite setting style TTRPG that's easy to engage with and easy to get into. And I think that's fine. It gets people to play a lot of different types of settings rather than just stock standard fantasy. And as well, it just provides a more like, oh, here, Jimmy, we got you the Star Wars D&D game because we heard you like D&D and I know you like Star Wars. And he might be like, okay, but he might play it later and have a lot of fun with it because he's like, oh, I never really thought about playing D&D with Star Wars. So I think they're doing what they should be doing, but I think it's not going to make people happy because people want a more in-depth, deep experience with D&D, and that's just not what they're providing. So,
yeah, it's the move that makes the most sense and I'm still surprised that they weren't doing this sooner, because if the big issue they have is they want to monetize D&D more, this is how you do it.
Yeah,
you license out IP, you do some like callback stuff. So yeah, I think that is going to be a big case when it comes to Dark Sun, because I don't know much about Dark Sun. It was never something that was on my radar. But like, it's going to draw people in who at least are like, oh yeah, D&D, and I do like this like dark fantasy vibe, so I might get some cool dark fantasy stuff out of it. And at worst, a book like that serves as what can I take out and add to my homebrew game. Like, that is what a lot of people I know use those books as. And the more books like that, cool, the better. That's going to make sales. And it makes sense to produce all of these things instead of their policy of make nothing and then wonder why they're not making money.
Yeah, like, or keep making like custom settings for D&D based not on Faerun, but just like around the idea of generic fantasy, and then be like, why did that not sell as well?
Like some of the decisions, largely like the big one is constantly we need to monetize D&D. Are we going to make more products? What? No. How do we make more products? Huh?
Yeah. So I think this is the right way. And to answer Andrew here, I would like to. There's one our tabletop stuff has been just a little messy. It's been a year where we just have lots of short interruptions for like a week or two, and then we played Anima, and we were planning on doing that a lot more, and we might still. And then we hit this Beast Tamer game, and then that has been going very, very well. And there's a decent chance that might extend into a somewhat longer game. But I am interested in Mistborn, and honestly, for the Cosmere RPG, I really wish they had done Mistborn first before Stormlight Archive. Like, I know Stormlight Archive was more the premiere series because it's Brandon Sanderson's epic, but I feel like Mistborn is the more interesting TTRPG, and I'm very excited for it because I'm really curious on how they're going to bring Mistborn to life through like their different talent trees and the different types of elemancy and parachemy and hemalurgy. So, you know, I don't know. We might try it out. You know, we might do like a one shot and see how that goes. Because when we tried to play the longer campaign that they made for Stormlight Archive, that didn't go so well. It's an interesting adventure from the perspective of someone who knows the setting, but from an adventure standpoint, it's just a little too linear, and there's not enough pressure from the narrative for the players to go through the narrative. You know what I mean?
It is a game that, to use a really good piece of screenwriting and just general storytelling advice. This is given by it's Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Their big advice they'll give everyone is in between story beats and plot beats, you should never use the words and or and then. You should use therefore and because. And that strings things together to make things not feel separate and everything have relation to each other. And then if you have those story beats, and like that's just how the Cosmere like Stormlight game felt. It felt like it was a lot of, and then we do this, and then you guys have to do this, and then you guys have to do this. And it was chasing after a dude who, in all honesty, I don't know, he had evil plans, but like I didn't hate the guy.
Well, it's just like why would a bunch of nobodies care about the honor blades? You know, like and we didn't do the initial chapter because we jumped in from a different point. But I did more to tie the characters into the story that felt a bit more compelling. Because the thing is, in the first chapter, you're supposed to like meet this guy who's supposed to be like your best friend by the end of it. And like it says the character should know this guy and blah, blah, blah. And then he dies. And then you're supposed to like chase this honor blade like in his honor. More or less is like the main driving force. And
which, like that's not a great thing to assume you could get your players to do with a campaign book setup.
Yeah, and then it's like I don't know. The biggest thing is you if you're going to run Stoneward, I think that's what it was called,
or Stonewalkers.
Your players need to like want the honor blade more than anything. Like they need to have it and make it theirs, or something. That's like the main driving force through the majority of the series. And like then there's this weird point where you can fight the guy and you can actually like beat him, and the book accounts for it, which is really weird. But also it would be weirder if you didn't have encounters with him. And he just kind of does he runs away thing a lot, which is just never fun for players. So I don't know. I'm also not super in like the Mistborn Legacy campaign that they're coming out with for Mistborn. I'm not sure how that's going to go because you're supposed to play in both eras. So either you're playing two different characters over a campaign, which I think is interesting, but a lot of players are kind of loath to give up their character that they just went through like half a campaign in, or your character gets transported from era 1 to era 2, which I think would be jarring.
I think the better option is to have it be two characters in a campaign. Only on one hand, I think that is a really interesting idea. And I think it's an idea that is different and I think is worth trying as an experiment because I think it's cool. And like there's the part of me where I think of like, all right, which version of this would I like more? I like the idea of playing a descendant of your character.
Yeah.
I think that is a really fun reflection, and if that's what they're going to do, I'll be hyped about it. If that's not what they're going to do, I'd like it to have an option, because I think that is way more interesting. Of you have your initial character, because that is just, I love Era 2 Mistborn. It is my favorite Sanderson thing. Like, I love it. But like the fun of Era 2 with a lot of its like crossovery bits is how you can tell some traits of these characters you read the trilogy of have reflected on this new world, and like how it reflects not just like the surface level, oh, things are named after them, but like a character being related to them, and like seeing how that character has progressed in some way and has like kind of been thought of in the heads of people from like 300 years of history. I think it's really cool. And like to that extent, I hope that's what they lean into. Because the alternative, I think, would be really cheap and forced and annoying.
Yeah.
And also, it kind of fucks with the how allomancy stuff in Feruchemy now works, because because of the systems and how everything has changed. I think it's made it so twinborns are more common, like one of the big things. But also it makes it so like Mistborns as a thing cannot really come up in Era 2. You
I
have
don't
to be
think...
you have to be forced into it, but like you cannot. There are no Mistborns running around in Era 2.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure Mistborns are kind of more of a bestowed thing than it would be a naturally occurring thing.
Because I think the explanation is like, on one hand, it was kind of pushed that way by the god, but also like the blood is diluted to a point where there's just you have to be the kid of a Mistborn, essentially, to have that power.
Yeah.
But it's 300 years of like generation and genealogy. It's kind of diluted enough.
The twinborn, though, I don't think is that common, because the I forget says it's people.
It's more common. It's more common than it would be in Era 1.
For sure, but like
that's more what I mean.
They're like those people. I forget what they're called. Says it's culture. They're still really rather reclusive. We saw that in Era 2 as well.
They're still reclusive, but like it's the difference of the way they do the breeding programs, where it's just kind of impossible. Terrace people. Yeah. Well, yeah, in Terrace 1, or in Terrace 1, in Arrow 1, Lord Ruler was intentionally trying to breed out Feruchemy. And failed. But in Era 2, the Terrace people are still a lot more reclusive. Granted, Twinborn are like pretty much only a thing in Era 2.
Era 2.
It kind of gives me the vibe of especially with how some of the characters that we meet with Terrace in them talk about it, is it feels like it's kind of Amish. Where like there's a practice in Amish stuff of you have like a year or two. You have a gap year for being Amish, and you can go around into the modern world and essentially see how horrifying it is and come back to the safety and the better with God lifestyle. But there are a lot of people who do that and then they just don't come back.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it feels with some of the terrorist people who are like, you know what, fuck this. I just want to have an apartment, like hang out.
I don't know.
Because I mean, that's one we see primarily in the story, is one who's like, I just like going out and drinking and partying.
Yeah. I view it kind of more as like a more reclusive Native American kind of thing. Funny enough, though, when you mentioned the Amish thing, the Koloss do kind of more the Amish thing.
Yeah. It's largely just the idea of it's a somewhat secluded, on purpose gathering of people, and like people, you're allowed to hang out there. They just might be like, why are you here? If like you're not Terrace. But it's a big like family is everything, we gather together like this. And then some people do just leave because that lifestyle doesn't work for them. Which that's at least where it seems like a lot of the twinborn people come from, are like someone who is left and is a little bit like your family, but like your grandma or whatever fully was like, fuck this, I'm out, and wanted nothing to do with us. Like that's some of the vibes I get, but it's rare still, because it should be. Twinborn should not be common.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, for Era 3, we might actually see more Twinborn come about.
I have a feeling we will, because Era 3 is like 90s and early 2000s era.
Yeah, early computer age.
Yeah.
So
And I think we've already seen we've the first chapter's been released, and
yeah, it's a little terrace girl.
Yeah. So I think it will be more common.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Speaking on Brotherwise as well, I'm actually super interested in the release of their I just had the name for it and I dropped it. Their setting.
War for Roshar?
No. That I'm actually not that interested in it. I think it's okay, but I don't know. Might be a little bit too board gamey of a war game for me. No, their version of their TTRPG playset. I'm reading an article about it because again, like I'm trying to do my best to stay apprised, but it's been a little hard. And it's like rattling around in my head. I'm just kind of waiting for it to settle. Was that on a different page I was reading before? I think it might have been. Reading a Polygon article about it, I think.
Oh, is it Plot Weaver?
Plot Weaver, there it is. Yeah, I'm very interested in Plot Weaver because that's the engine of the Cosmere RPG brought into its own thing. And why I'm interested in it mostly is because I kind of hope they do a little bit more decoupling from D&D and
yeah,
make it kind of more of its own thing, because I do think the engine itself has a lot of interesting ideas. I love the talent trees. I love how characters, like when they level up, they get another, they move a little bit further down a tree. I wish it was done in a slightly more accelerated way, or like there are levels where you get multiple talents, which is really nice. But when we were playing, for instance, the players who were playing as Radiants, which was pretty much everyone, wanted more Radiant powers, and so invested mostly in that, even though like the other talent trees are really, really cool. And so it just made the characters a lot more two-dimensional and not as diverse as they could have been. But to be fair, it's a style of TTRPG that is not supposed to overwhelm the players with too many options and too many things. I just would prefer if it was too many options, too many things, a little bit, I want more tools, I want more things to do. I can handle a character sheet, thank you very much.
Honestly, like it feels like having there be some extra form of mechanic for becoming Radiant, or doubling down on your human paths, like as almost like extra free stuff, it wouldn't overwhelm if they went that route, and I kind of wish they would, because I'm still a guy. I can still be a tactician. I don't stop learning swordsmanship just because I have magic now.
I mean, some people might. I think it's it's an interesting thing to ask, but the problem is Radiant powers are just really, really cool, and that's what players are going to pick, and it makes their characters less interesting. But also, I don't think going super diverse is the best way, because there are some really cool Radiant powers that I would like to get my hands on, but you can't get them unless you invest for quite a few levels. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I feel like a couple extra free levels, like for one or the other, is something that, like, man, not even for please let me get more powerful, but just let me branch out and like feel a bit more free to do so, because it comes so sparingly and you get so little that you have a game track, and then by the time you have what you want, you've neglected like a few other things.
Yeah,
and that's more my issue. I think it is a numbers game to fix, like of a problem to fix. I think that can be fixed with If there's a way to basically make it that you are not able to use this free stuff to power level like your Radiant stuff all the way down to, which I mean they have the bond system for that reason, but like you can't power level your powers to be like, hey, what's up, I'm level 3 and I have like full shard plate and all that. Like I think that's a little extreme. But if there's just some, it's like free archetype for Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a game that at times can feel like there's a track that you need to fall down. And when you get free archetype, you can pick some like really flavorful options. If like you don't need one more thing to make the build work, but like one thing to make your build have another fun characterization to it. That is like more what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a thing to be fixed because I think it's working as designed. Again, they are trying to produce a easy to access game. So that is their intent, is to make it where they're not giving the players too many options and to make it very restricted in this way for that very reason. And their idea is that players are going to be like, oh, do I go Radiant or do I do this? And have a lot more like the excitement of choice when crafting their particular character. And I think that's fine. I think there's definitely a crowd of people like that. But I feel like if you're going to be a niche TTRPG, you should fly towards more niche gamers in this space, which often are not people who are going to be overwhelmed by only a handful of options. So
it is funny you say that, because to some extent, that is kind of what's going on with Vampire 6th Edition right now.
Yeah, I was reading that section here as well. We kind of already touched on it a little bit, but Vampire is also getting a 6e.
Entirely a new World of Darkness 6e, because on the tracker of like the timeline of shit that's going to get dropped for 6e after this, we're getting a Return to the Dark Ages, which is a really fun setting. We are getting Changeling the Dreaming is coming back. I think the last game it got was revised. I don't think it had a 20th anniversary release. And Mage the Ascension 6th Edition. And yeah, it is. I mean, I can say, because I've read through the rules of it and talked about it a bunch with other WoD fans. It is moving away from a lot of normal storyteller engine ideas. Like there's a couple bits. I think the new dice system is interesting. Instead of their unique dice, they are utilizing D10s, and it's 7, 8, or it's like an 8, 9, and 10 is successes, and then below that are failures, and there's extra successes you can get, and then there are meta currencies, and there's a bit of like there's some inspiration very much at Daggerheart's like hope and fear system. There's that aspect seems to be there as well. As well, the one part I also have a big issue with this game, it makes a whole big talk about, and I hope this is just maybe an alpha thing, they make a whole big talk about the idea is that narrative combat and like narrative encounter stuff has the same level of legitimacy as physical combat, and then most of the upgrades you get are all based in physical combat. Like, we don't have a bunch of examples I can point to in the playtest that are, oh, that's a narrative combat mechanic for like your character's powers or upgrades. As well, there are discipline changes. I like disciplines upgrading as you level. I think that's really cool. There's some gamification elements I think are really neat. I don't like that some of the like, you know, staple disciplines that have been in the game since like the first edition are changed and gone. There's a couple that are like that. But there's a big complaint that is going on because a lot of actual Vampire fans are not happy with this playtest. Like a lot of them. I've seen very little of people saying it's good. Basically, people are in my camp, where my camp, from my reaction of reading everything, is I think this would work well with our table specifically because it has a lot of mechanics and style of play that suits our table.
Yeah.
And I disagree with some points about meta currencies I've seen people make. because we've played a lot of games with a form of meta currency, like having the GM have points to do something, the players have points to do something. It's common, and a lot of the complaints I see are people who just like, no fault to them, they just haven't played a game with a meta currency. And because a key complaint is like, well, so what? I have to spend a point to do what I as a GM could always do.
Yeah.
It just feels like the game thinks I'm stupid. It's like, not really. It's not what it's doing. It's gamifying other tools that you have access to and creating a like narrative push and pull. Like that's the point of it.
Yeah.
But the big point I do agree with, even though I'm walking away from 6E being like, this looks like fun, is that it is a very big pivot away from what World of Darkness games have been for a really long time. And a vibe it has is that it's trying to appeal and grab more players, especially from like a D&D, Daggerheart type of perspective of players.
New age players, yeah.
Yeah, people who like, for a lot of people I've heard of, are intimidated by playing a WoD game because it's just very, very different. It's very, as it's written, very narrative focused and roleplay focused, so it's worrying. And because of that, it puts them in a situation I don't think is a great idea to do for your game, which is I worry 6th edition is going to land in the fun, peculiar spot of being too different to alienate its core player base, but also being still too different for like people who might not make the jump anyways because it's not their dragon game. Or like the game, they play one game and they're, you know, casual players who are like, I have time to play one game maybe once a month. I'm sorry, I'm gonna play the game I know, not this new vampire game. So like, that's my worry, is that it's 5e was already a pretty disastrous edition for WoD. A lot of people didn't like it, and then 6th edition, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I don't know if that was the greatest idea.
I mean, to be fair, this is the playtest, an alpha playtest of all things.
Yes.
And so they are definitely still very in the production phase. They can definitely change a lot of things.
I think it is a great situation for all this criticism to be present. Because this is the time to be this critical. And I think there's a lot of points people have made that while I can still sit here and be like, it looks like fun, I like a lot of the decisions it makes, I like a lot of the points it makes for tabletop stuff. Like, I like the idea of a game actually doing something that should be pretty good GM advice of, hey, be, you know, choosy about when you're asking your players to roll. Don't just roll for, like, every little action. Roll if there's a serious chance of them failing. Or, like, of a consequence happening. I like that. I think the idea of how they're gamifying the push and pull of humanity and the beast is really cool. The issue I then see is typically the humanity system is very much a like, it's meant to be something that adds a lot of moral grayness to the game, and it's something you grapple with as basically the humanity tracker starts slipping out of your fingers, and is meant to add this horror to it. And then the humanity tracker for 6E is very like, if I would put it, and I think it's a really funny way to put it, is it feels like it's a very centrist answer of it's in the middle. It's not making any real points with its humanity system, but I think the gamification is fun. Is kind of my takeaway from it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting situation, I think, of a game where I hope they listen to a lot of the feedback, and I hope they're getting actually good feedback. It's good in some way. I feel like I'm reading a lot of the feedback and it feels fair, or at least like a lot of it is just, this isn't the WoD I appreciate, and which is why I think the stepping so far away from what your game has been since its literal start is not a great move. It's not going to endear your new game to a lot of people, when I think a lot of these mechanics I find interesting can be married into what like a core WoD gameplay experience feels like.
I don't know. I disagree. So as I was saying, this is an alpha test. This is still like the start of what they're going to produce. But first and foremost, a game company needs to sell games, and your old die-hard niche of players are obviously not considered a valuable enough asset for them to keep producing towards. So this game is going to be difference because they have to experiment to do new things. So while this game is definitely new in its alpha phase and everything like that, and while a lot of people are going to have a lot of these complaints, a lot of the people who care about this are going to be making complaints that are going to be irrelevant for what their goal is moving forward. And I somewhat agree with what the article is saying, where it's good to make a clean cut because, in all honesty, they need new blood to get vampire relevant in the scene again. And they need to do something new. They need to try out something that GMs are going to be interested in running, because, as they said, there's been a lot of people interested in playing in World of Darkness and not as interested in running World of Darkness. Because I think this is a failing of many like legacy titles in the TTRPG space. Many of these titles are super reliant on the GM to be the core creative force and the core motive force for the game to move forward. You know, the GM is the one who's telling the story, who's making the players make checks and everything like that. And the problem with that is, back in the day, we had no other choice, and so we got good at that. But there's newer GMs coming out now who don't have that same experience, and there are games now giving GMs more tools, more levers to pull and knobs to twist, and that actually turn the game into somewhat of a game for the GM, making it interesting. Daggerheart's fear and hope system is kind of fun for the GM because they can use that fear to create pushback on the players in a way that feels fair to the players because they are generating the fear. And that's something that, like, in older editions, you had to trust your GM that when they did something nasty against you, it was in good faith because they didn't have that tool before. But because we have that tool now, it's more permissible because it's just a part of the game. And there's many other systems out there that are allowing GMs to interact with players in somewhat negative ways with the point of making the experience more interesting, more challenging, that feels more grounded and more fair and not just on the GM's whim. And a lot of people are going to rub raw against this because it's just not how they've run games or played games up until this point. And for Vampire specifically, it's always been a system that has been very heavy in the narrative. It's very much about telling the story of the kindred and telling the story in a fascinating setting. And the further they gamify it, or the further they make it more accessible to people who are less in the setting, the less interesting it is for people who are already deep in the setting, because it feels like rehashing old territory. You know, like, oh, we're going to talk about the La Sombra again, or we're going to talk about the Ventrue again in this new book, and we're going to try to recreate it. It's like, we've already done this. We want something new. We want something interesting for us, and that's just not how it's going to be. I hope they definitely lean more into a narratively driven gameplay experience, because I feel like TTRPGs are definitely moving in a direction where narrative and gameplay are being married more and more. And Vampire needs it, and it needs a game that feels the hand of the narrative in every aspect of gameplay. And right now they're definitely throwing a lot of things on the wall. The players are not going to enjoy it.
Like, I think still, like, my takeaway is it's an alpha test, and there's a lot of the criticism that I disagree with in where I read it, and it's like, oh, you just haven't played a game like that. Like, and all I can say is, like, I promise to you, like, to some people, like, I promise the meta, like, devices, the drama system and the quickening system, they don't feel like that in play. They don't feel as bad as people are, like, making it out to be. The core stuff that I think is maybe the stuff that I'd like to see tweaked. On one hand, I like and dislike how they're handling blood and your health. I like the idea that health is also a resource to use your powers. I think that leads to a little bit of a situation where maybe the new kindreds would be a little too feed hungry and try to drink as much as they can, which can cause a lot of other issues just for your chronicle. But I want to see that in play because I don't know how the math is going to turn out. It's more of a math question than a how well will this work conceptually. I think the humanities section could use a little bit of a tweaking because like I think that is a pivot that is easy to change but keep gamified. There's certain little tidbits like that because I think the other big one is I want to see what else they have planned for narrative stuff because I'm being the my charitable read is that for a playtest they're leaning a bit more combat. But if they wanted to show off that, hey, we're making narrative encounters as legitimate and on equal standing to combat encounters, and then we see none of it, and we don't see the systems interacting with it, now I'm like, okay, I really hope that carries through. And is it like, oh, it's on equal footing, and then it's a very abstract kind of nothing roleplay thing?
Yeah.
Because I want to see narrative gamified. That's the type of thing that works well with Vampire. But a fear a lot of people have, and like, I don't have the same fear, but I definitely would be disappointed if 6e went down this route. I think one of the biggest pivots away, in a bad way, of World of Darkness is if it becomes a very combat heavy, if it becomes kind of the D&D experience of just combat is the solution to everything, or combat-like equivalent of I kind of just put someone in submission rather than an interesting narrative solution to a problem. There's like a handful of those issues. I think these pivots honestly can work and like just need tweaking. That's really where I stand. I'm a lot less of a doomer on this because I think there's just a degree of maybe they frame it slightly different. They do something that can appease people. But like a lot of the bigger conceptual changes Vampire 6e is going on, I like. I like the return to the meta plot because I think in our modern day we exist in a point where the old issue with meta plots was in that old issue, like you were saying, of the old GMs just have to do it. You had to basically play and get every game line to know what the fuck's happening in the setting. And you have to engage with all these other things and piece together 5 books that are all contradictory, like shit like that. But now we're in a modern age where we have digital compendiums, we have YouTubers, we have ways to get in on the meta plot while like not buying every single thing, or at least having it be digestible. And quite honestly, that is actually the best thing 6th edition does. Because in that cadence of legacy games, you just have to force your way through it and get the system mastery. Historically, World of Darkness games are not that complicated of actual systems. They just communicate it in like the worst way possible.
Yeah.
Like Vampire 5e is not that hard of a game. We should not have struggled as hard as we did with basic fucking mechanics, but it's because the core book is laid out like an insane person made it.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. And I like that 6th edition, with the rules it laid out, as I read through it, I'm like, I understand how this game works. Like, I understand how to play it. That extent, they're making great work on that. I hope that stays. Like, if anything, I would like a couple more examples of things, because there are some very goofy takeaways you can take with, like, some less examples. Like how they're handling NPC health in, like, levels. They have tier systems from, like, 0 to 5. Level 0 are enemies that you can basically, if you do any form of damage, they die instantly. Yeah. But it doesn't lay a framework of what the levels of like these creatures might look like. So the first image a lot of people have, me myself included, we're making fun of it in my Discord, was picture it's like a guy, just a guy with a gun, and you just like step on his foot real hard and he dies like on the spot. I think it's more realistic that it's like a swarm of rats or something. Some form of like very tiny threat that's happening to you rather than a guy.
No, so I disagree. What the point of the tier 0 mook is, right, is when you're watching like a movie scene, these are like the hundreds of thugs that run after John Wick or whatever, get shot once and die. Because vampires are powerful. A single backhand from a vampire can knock a guy's head off. It's not like if I do a single point of damage. Pose. The expectation is I cleave the man with the force that would cleave a truck in half with my claws or whatever. Or I shoot him in the head with my gun with my insane, hand-eye coordination and reflexes. Like, I mean, HP in games has always been rough because it's always been a metaphorical relation to HP. It's not like a statistic because there's no real like in life or a equivalent to like how much damage points a person can take before dying, because being shot in the head is less overall body damage but will kill you, where being shot in the foot 100 times might kill you due to shock and pain, but if you bind it quickly, won't kill you. So
yeah, it's more of like a little example of a part. It's the parts of the book, because there's so much like actual clarity of what they're going on for the playtest, where then you read through something and you kind of like have a funny image in your head. Because I think, quite honestly, what its intention is because the 3 tiers, you can easily add in characters to be like, all right, I have 2 standard enemies, I have 5 minions. Is it states like minions are creatures with no willpower or health points. They are usually in large swarms and just like high concentrations of things. And then standard is just they have like 3 plus some part of the PC level. So like if you're fighting a guy or someone who's kind of charged up or anything like that, it would be more likely they're going to stand in like a standard. But mainly the reason it adds that dichotomy for Vampire is just because it's just a thing Vampire's never really done. And Vampire is also, like, as a game, wanted to be a bit more grittier.
Yeah.
And so adding these mechanics when you see it is like, oh, my takeaway is, like, I immediately understood what they were saying and, like, pointing out, because I think having a minion tier thing is important for a game. You kind of need the swarm. It's just, there's occasionally little bits like, fuck, I'd love it if you at least named a few examples in prompts, because everything else has examples in prompts and it rules. Like, I really love how they're working with expertise. I can still be sad that less skills exist in the game, but I like that they're making it so you have a fuck ton of expertise as you level up. That is really good. I love that. And how they're doing expertise is great.
And I think the biggest thing I want to impress upon people is Vampire 6th Edition isn't for prior edition players. Like, plain and simple. It's a new game, right? You can enjoy the property. You can enjoy the IP of Vampire. And enjoy the games for what they were and still are, as long as you're playing the games, you know. Like, those games still exist in that way. But this new version of Vampire is not going to be the same. Obviously, the vibe they're going for is going to be somewhat different. And kind of like how this article was mentioning before, was old Vampire was very anti-culture in a lot of ways. And I mean, like, the 80s was a very big, like, grunge punk era of...
Those games are very punk.
Yeah, and like, that's the point. They don't care about people's sensibilities, right? They don't care about things that the system tells you are right or wrong. The point is to do it your way. And it's just like, in the cycle of the world, we kind of go through these purity eras where now we're a lot more sensitive to that kind of stuff. But, you know, at some point, that sensitivity is going to be overwhelming for people. And then we're going to go back to a grunge-like era where we stamp on all those kinds of things all over again. You could say that won't happen, but it has several times before, and it will happen several times again.
Yeah.
But it's important to mention, this new age of Vampire is being developed with the current age of people in mind. So it's going to be different, and it's going to have a different vibe. It's going to literally be a different... Like, you might as well just consider it's just a different company making Vampire content, because that's effectively what they're going for.
I mean, it also kind of is, because it's 5th edition was marred with a lot of issues. I think 6th edition is going to be somewhat of a return to form. It's what they want. They're claiming it to be, because Paradox was in control of White Wolf with 5th edition. And because of 5th edition, like, I have a lot of points in my videos where I think people are, like, way too mean about 5e, and I think it's very fair if people don't like something. My line in the sand is always, but, like, be honest about why you don't like it. Don't say the reason I don't like it and then spit something that's factually untrue about the game.
Yeah,
that's what gets me. And, like, that's what I've that's a large thing I've been chatting about in my own Discord. Is I think people's issues with some parts of the games are fair. I don't think it's gonna land that way in the end, because I also feel like I have the same opinion that I think editions need to be treated like different entries of a game, and that, or even different games entirely, because I think it is a worse issue if they make a game and they're like, hey, what's up, guys? It's 6th edition. And when you look at it, you're like, this is 5e, which is a different art style. Like, I think that's worse.
Yeah.
Because, like, then what's the point? And, like, a large aspect is there's people who are not going to be happy when it comes to 5th edition, because people like 5th edition because the intended point of it is you are playing lower level things and there's less meta plot. It is very centered and, like, focused. They're going away from that in 6th edition, which appeals to me. And I think as a playtest, it's a strong showing, and I really hope they're getting good feedback, because all of my own takeaways from 6e is like, oh man, these need some tweaking, but I think the core ideas that are being expressed in 6th edition are strong and interesting, and like can work really well. And I think the main game of it can be good. I'm really happy that they're releasing this to an alpha. And because of that, I'm super curious when they post or at least chat about, because there's a dev diary series now they're doing. And also the devs are pretty active on the official World of Darkness like Discord. I really hope they're getting good feedback and they find really good through lines to address, because I think there is a happy middle ground where they can keep this new identity and the new concepts while also at least still giving it that WoD kind of flavor to it. Something to make people happy, because I would like it if a new property could have an entry. This is just all across nerd culture. I just want a new thing that releases to be actually enjoyed and celebrated, instead of what is every trend is new thing comes out and it's universally hated even if it's good. I can't stand that. It's such an annoying trend. I'd love it for Vampire to be kind of a good release. WoD's been through it, and I think unjustly been through it.
Yeah, well,
so I'm happy, and I hope the people filling out the Google forms are reasonable.
They won't be. But,
yeah, they won't be. I hope there's a through line, because like any criticism, you read it, and if you see some like constant stuff, it's like, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Because I just think there's a happy middle ground where you can have a real interesting pivot while also keeping what a bunch of the core stuff for World of Darkness is intact. And some of that is just, do you change the names of things? Do you lightly change how some disciplines work? Do you alter how humanity is tracked? Maybe you make health and blood different points again. It's not going to hurt anything. The game can still operate in this new way. It just makes people happy even on the surface level. Like, I'm fine if even that happens. If they come back and they're like, guess what, it's 5.5 edition, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah,
I don't want that to happen.
And that's the thing. That's why I say this new edition isn't for people who enjoyed the prior ones before, because they're trying something new. They're trying to evolve Vampire to keep up with the times. And
also, like, those games exist still. Like, it's not like 20th anniversary revised or 5th edition are deleted.
Right.
This is honestly, it's a takeaway I'm having when it comes to the Demon the Fallen video I'm editing now, where Demon the Fallen is talked about often as a WoD game. It's talked a lot about like it's an equivalent to Changeling the Dreaming, Hunter the Reckoning, like some of the more niche releases. Hunter's not niche, but still, it's one of the big three. But like some of the niche entries in WoD, it's kind of treated like that. Demon the Fallen was an active game that ran for 2 years. It had a single core book, a couple supplements, and then it tied in with the Time of Judgment plotline, which was every WoD title had something in 2005. Like, that's what it has. And there's an element where people are really begging, please, can we get Demon the Fallen back? And when I read Demon, the intention when it was created was that it is a finite thing. It has a set end, like start date and end date for production. And like, that's all it would get. And there's a kind of an interesting aspect to the finality of tabletop editions. Like, once an edition is considered done and they're moving on to the next thing, I think there is a interesting place it can start to hold for fans and players, because now you have a complete product and you're not gonna like do some shit and then like, oh fuck, this homebrew mechanic just got undone because they did it in a different way officially, or some lore stuff that fucks with your campaign, things like that. And also the fact of like what your point was is that game, like actual audiences today are different than what they used to be. Demon the Fallen is a very angsty game, and it bleeds early 2000s. And so if we return to Demon the Fallen in 2027, 2028, it's just not going to be Demon the Fallen that people want, because it's not going to be a carbon copy of that vibe. It's a different vibe because different people are making it in a different environment in this era, not from like 20 to almost 30 years ago. So like, it is a thing I walk away from being like, I kind of hope they don't return to it. I think it stops being a little interesting experimental art piece when it starts to become like, all right, let's get Demon the Fallen 6th edition. Because it's just not going to be anything what Demon fans want. The 5 Demon fans that are out there. Like, it's not going to be the game that they want.
Well, yeah, but that's why they have to be okay with something that comes out being different with the same name, and just understand that it's not made for them. Like,
it's more of like, I wish instead, if that happens, I would rather them create an actually new game line, like a new thing, rather than like, let's go back to Demon the Fallen. Because like, I'm more interested in seeing a new idea and concept from a new dev team than a return to form that changes like the entire vibe in something that is just very dated.
Sure, but I think it's very selfish to be like, hey, don't touch my thing, do something else, because that's just not how like nostalgia and things work. Like, it's the reason why nothing is sacred as far as movies is concerned anymore. Because as much as you might say, you know, the people who liked it won't watch it, blah, 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 they might anyway, because that's why we have reruns of classic movies and live action and blah, blah, blah. It's just, the thing can still be special. It can still exist in the time frame that it did and has the type of game that it is. And if something else comes along with the same name, it's just a different thing, you know? It's people's perception of ownership of an idea, you know, like, oh, it's why we have D&D grognards who hate D&D 5e with a fiery passion. They're like, I hate what they've done to my D&D, and it's like, it's not your D&D anymore. It's not, this game wasn't made for you. This game wasn't made with the old play style or the old feel or vibe in the same regard. It's a different thing. Your thing still exists, and if you're upset that stuff isn't being made for it, well, that's just the times. That's just how it goes. There are tons of third-party people out there who still make content for like D&D 3.5, for instance. It's not a lot, and it's not as much as people would want, but we as tabletop gamers, we need to let go. let games evolve and change and do something different, because the only reason why we get new interesting game styles, new interesting takes on genres, is because companies go out of their way to experiment. Sometimes they do interesting things. A lot of beloved systems nowadays went out of their way to go against the grain and make their version of a thing, and now we're playing like Powered by the Apocalypse, you know, was a kind of a counter White Wolf system, because they reduced the number of dice to a minimum. They definitely went a lot more of telling the story around the context of the dice, rather than, you know, oh, I have this many points in this and that, let me roll a bucket load of dice and see how many successes I get kind of game. And as long as another system doesn't come out that's just trying to be D&D in a different set of clothes, I'm happy. I want more and different types of things to come out. But just because something new with your IP comes out doesn't mean that the game you loved goes away. We play Anima Beyond Fantasy, a game that is so dated in so many ways and so weeby, and yet it's just something special. And if a new anima comes out, that doesn't mean old anima goes away. And And it's hard. It's hard to come to terms with that.
I think it's more of like, because my take is honestly similar in the, sometimes we need to learn to let things go. It's just, I mean, I extend this to video games, to movies, to everything. I just think it would be nicer artistically if we got better at letting things die in a way of, this thing exists, it's never going to not exist. Do we return to it? I don't know, unless we have a really cool idea. I at least have my issue with WoD fans when they talk about, man, we need to bring Demon back. And then I know if they bring Demon back, like, what the fuck? Why'd you bring Demon back? This isn't Demon. It's like, well, yeah, you wanted a carbon copy, or like, you could just ask for a core book reprint. I think it's what you actually wanted. Instead of, you don't want a new edition, you want a reprint. Which is fair, actually. The old book is a little crusty. You could make the typeface a little better.
I think it's more ephemeral than that. I think they want Demon, some people, and this goes for a lot of things, because I do this in a lot of kinds of games too. You want a new version of a thing you liked before to come out with this kind of this hidden desire that there's going to be some change that you're going to really like. You can't put your finger on it. You don't know exactly what you want to change, but you want something good to change.
Something to elicit the reaction of you finding and loving something that like, you loved before.
And it's kind of like gambling in that way, right?
Yeah.
It's why MMO players are in this endless loop of a new MMO comes out and they're getting into the game and they're like, I want this to be like MMOs I've played before, but a change that I can't tell you what it is, where I will fall in love in the game like I did with like World of Warcraft or whatever. And it rarely happens. And that's because sometimes what you want is just such a specific thing that unless you can tell someone it's just not going to be a thing. So if they do release a new Demon, the people who want new Demon stuff want something that is enough reminiscent and similar to Demon, but changed in some way that makes it better than it was. And that's just, you can't do that if you don't try and fail and try and fail and try and
it's
fail.
Something I would be very happy to eat my words on, even though like I also think to an extent that point of like, I want that ephemeral thing I can't name. Sometimes for a lot of people, I think that ephemeral thing they can't name is essentially, I want to feel like I did when I liked this as a kid, or I liked this in a mindset that was just different and less stressed out. And often it's just that return to like, I want to feel that way again from this. And as an adult with these new stresses, why can't I feel this anymore? And some internalize that into, well, there's nothing good happening anymore and there's no new good games. It's a shared trait I see a lot from people who are like, there hasn't been a good game made for 20 years. It just happens to coincide with once I started to become an adult and become stressed out and angry in my day-to-day life.
I don't like the argument because I feel like it in some way removes people's ability to like properly judge whether something is good or not. And two, I think there's just a better way of putting it. We just want things to feel newer, because back then they were newer to us because we hadn't lived that long. We haven't played that many video games. And discovery is a universal like enjoyment in people. How much we care about a thing, or how much we learn to care about a thing in the act of discovery of finding that new thing, is always magical. It's like playing your first Dark Souls game. It always feels way more magical than every other Dark Souls game afterwards. And logically speaking, I think people understand that, like, well, the new games are a lot like the old games, you know? The lore is presented in the same way. The vibe is very much the same, but it feels different because it's retread ground. It doesn't feel as unique or as it's not as exciting to find things because you're finding the same kind of things in the same kind of way that you were doing before. People yearn for stimulus. People yearn for something that feels new, that feels exciting, that feels interesting. And it's not about being stressed. It's not about, oh, I'm working all the time. Why does this not satisfy me like the way it used to? It doesn't satisfy you the way it used to because you've done it 1,000 times. If you're expecting it to get the same amount of stimulus, our brains don't work that way. We don't get like endorphins or a variety of other happy chemicals when we're subjected to the same stimulus over and over and over again. Our brains seek out novel and unique experiences. So it's very reasonable then that when we find something old but new, that we're looking for that new kind of stimulus that grabs you and that entrances you like it did back in the day. But when half of it is retread, half of it, you know, like for D&D enjoyers, right? This is my D&D. I am already familiar with many of these concepts, like being a wizard, being a warrior, being whatever. But now there's all these new things that aren't something I like, or that don't share the same vibe. Why is it not hitting like it did before? It's hitting for people now, you know. There's people who are jumping into D&D and it's a magical experience. They're getting that same feeling that you did back then. So what's the difference? It's for many, there's older people who are getting into D&D nowadays. You know, there's parents getting into D&D for the first time with their kids who are getting that experience now. It's not about age. It's not about that kind of stuff. It's about stimulus. It's about what's new. So, you know, people who seek like reinvigorated stimulus from rehashed ideas are always going to be disappointed to some degree. It's just the nature of things.
The people that... I had a friend, I mean, I disagreed with him often because he had a core point of Dark Souls is just getting too easy. Like, FromSoft is kind of losing its edge and all the games are too easy. Where I would bring up, no, it's because you've played all of them.
Yeah.
You're good at it.
You parried 1,000 times, and so now parrying's easy for you.
Now that every game is easy to you, you've done this. Like, I think to some extent, there's obviously truth to that. It's overexposure. I mean, I wish that. It's something I see in myself of like, man, I have this ephemeral thing in games I'm trying to find and seek, like video games, and I can't find it. It's like, yeah, because a chunk of it is just, I've played so many things, so I know what to expect and I know it. But also, there's just that extent with that feeling, I think a lot of people hit of like, man, there's just something about that state of mind that's really appealing. But honestly, I hold the take I do. I think it's just a very artsy stance I got, which is, I think there is a beauty in the finality of things. I think having something be closed and finished and done, especially if it is something that is very of the times, and going back and reading or playing or watching it is in some way reflective of its time period. There's a beauty in that artistically, and I think in that instance, a version of Demon the Fallen coming back, just using it as an example, I would like. Sure. I would love it a lot if it came back as like, I don't know, fucking Nephilim the Penitent, and it was it wasn't Demon the Fallen. It took a lot of concepts from Demon, but a big reason I also have the stance for Demon is because Demon the Fallen as like a game is so predicated on it existing in Revised Edition that it would need a complete lore rewrite for it to exist outside of it. The meta plot of Revised is something that has kind of been dropped in later editions. So it's something that's it is a load-bearing pillar of what Demon is. But like, so in that case, I would prefer Demon the Fallen can stay its own little like finished art piece, but there's something that has the vibes maybe, but to a modern day, it's different, it's twisted, it's added more things to it. Because there are enough concepts in Demon the Fallen I think are genuinely sick. A big one is Torment. Torment is such a cool idea. It is the actual manifestation of your PTSD from being in the abyss and the shame and guilt. And the higher your Torment, it's like a scale from 1 to 10. The higher your Torment, it actually affects how your character plays. So like if you use a magical power, there's a power example that's in the core book that is the Voice of God. It is a power that like forces everyone to like listen to you, answer like an immediate request of yours. It's like a spread out command word. If you have really high Torment, it alters your power, so then it has a chance to explode out of you and actually concuss people around you. And so high Torment powers, if you have high Torment and you're trying to deal with it, you can accidentally do a bunch of collateral damage. And like, they're more dangerous abilities, or they're just more cruel in some way. And that is such a cool mechanic for a game that like I would love to see ideas like that return. I would love to see it twisted a little and like made different, so that something isn't trying to harness a vibe that doesn't exist anymore in our day-to-day lives, but instead works with what we have today. And I think that is what a like reframing or a new IP that is heavily inspired or a spiritual successor can do better than a pure doing something for nostalgia and reviving it. Like that is something I'd like to see.
My knee-jerk reflex was demon with everything but in name, but I agree with the idea of rebooting settings is always bad, and that's always because I shouldn't say always bad. There's always exceptions, but
it's a lot of times it doesn't work.
It's usually bad because it is you're having two different like vibes typically in writing. Even writers who, like, if Brandon Sanderson tried to write Elantris, like a continuation of Elantris's story, not like a time jump, but like just an actual, like, all right, and then the next adventure, it would feel different and it would do poorly because he's just a different person writing it now. He knows more, and
even
how
if he
feels
rewrote
different.
The first Elantris story, it would just be very different.
Yeah, and so it's not going to work even if they have a good writer, because people change over time. And settings, I think there's I think you're justified in saying I would like to preserve like the story, the narrative of Demon as it was and as it went through as a thing, and trying to reboot that story, that setting is not going to be good. I agree. I think that's a bad idea because you're trying to create new stimulus from old materials, and that's just not going to work because, again, you have to retread. You have to dig up old story points and either like change their ending or whatever, and it never works. A new story would be good. I think they could still call it Demon. I think it's just with the idea that this is a whole nother thing or just a whole nother universe or whatever. Leave the old story, the old narrative alone, and come out new with many of the same ideas. Just change the lore, change the important characters, change the important locations. Don't make it the same but new. Make it new but new. You know,
yeah, it's why I prefer the idea of a spiritual successor in a lot of situations, because like I think it's way more interesting for a game, and this is like to the point where I like spiritual successor concepts a lot more, because then they don't land like, oh, it's just this but with a different coat of paint on it. It lands like it is someone who is inspired or really clearly enjoys it. You can feel that hand and that influence on this piece, but it is something different. And like it's the reason too I even say the name change but have it be really obvious it's like a continuation, because like at first and foremost, like it hurts me, but man, people do not understand what additions are. It's just constant. They're like an addition, so it's the same game again. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not that. And to the point where maybe, you know what, maybe Hasbro is right that the general audience doesn't know what an addition is, because that's still my theory on 5.5. But like, I think having a taking a lot of the really great ideas of Demon and then fixing some of the rules jank, because there's some. A big one is and also there's some lore jank in there, because a big complaint people had of Demon at the time is it being literally at the tail end of WoD stuff. It kind of came in and was like, oh yeah, by the way, that thing, demon the whole time, that's a demon, that was an angel actually. And it kind of just like, oh, so okay, if you're taking it as a giant like all around encompassing setting, which it was written kind of to do, it comes around with, I guess, demon is the right answer to all these like cool questions we had the whole time. And then also just rules jank, because demons were at a state where like Imagine playing a game with such a cool, like, personal story you can tell, but also like zero threat and stakes in anything, because demons are just kind of, you're possessing a body. You've taken a body and like you're possessing it. If you die, you go back to the abyss for a little bit and then you just come right back.
Yeah.
So like, and then also, by the way, you're immune to most other magical effects, so other supernatural creatures can't affect you. Like, you can't be charmed, you can't be feared. It takes a lot of damage to take you down, and even that's your physical form. Your actual like demon angel form can't be taken down. So like, it's a game that's really cool, but then I'm like, this is janky. And a lot of people apparently too, a big other complaint the game has is you go through a demon, the Fallen, you're like, this rules. All right, I want to run a campaign in this. What's the plot gonna be? Huh? What do I actually write? And like, it's just the type of chronicle you play is really hard to find. So like, for those things, I would love to see a fix, and I think a pivot from what Demon the Fallen is would be a really good answer. And I say this because there actually was a recent post I found in, like, it was sent to me, where the creative director said for 6th edition, if they weren't basically obligated to do Hunter and Werewolf after like Mage is done, they would make Demon the Fallen like 6e. Which, I mean, they seem like they're really passionate about 6th edition, and they're really passionate about Demon the Fallen. I still just hold my stance of, I would love to see the concepts taken and twisted rather than just a sequel.
Yeah.
Or just a weird reboot.
A point I was going to make earlier, and like, I agree with the narrative point, but like, there's also this aspect of TTRPGs where sometimes you have to let go of the narrative when it comes to a TTRPG, because the point of a TTRPG isn't an overarching narrative. It's to create a setting for people to play in and to have fun with and do their own thing with. And like, there's a lot of times where a new addition is the developers made a game, release a bunch of books for it, and they're like, I think we could do it better if we started from scratch. And then they do that, and they go back, start from scratch, and tweak some things and adjust it, because some editions have much smaller rule gaps than others, and some try to like reinvigorate the game in certain ways. And so like, I do think additions are important in that regard. And I don't have a problem with one edition being so drastically different than a prior edition. It's just kind of the thing of like the idea of the game, right? And that's kind of why like I resisted your notion that like a new demon shouldn't exist, because blah blah blah, artsy fartsy stuff. Because from a gaming standpoint, that doesn't matter. It's just about having a fun setting to tell stories in and do kinds of things. And like, while I agree the narrative and the actual like writing for it, it's good to have an endpoint, and rehashing that rarely works out. That's also like a bad thing to make your setting have an endpoint, because then a new edition has to struggle way harder to come about. And settings,
it's apparently how White Wolf used to operate back in the day is the reason they had such an insane release, just everything, was they had an A team and a B team. A team did they did Vampire, Werewolf, and Hunter, the things that made money and weren't just net losses of revenue. And then they had the B team. It gave them like a year basically to make the thing and just pump it out, because it was back in the day when publishing was dirt cheap.
Right.
So that is how they operated. And so they have some games like that where even like minor shit that like we're not even talking about anymore. Like, who is out here talking about I have one subscriber who's pushing it, that there's a WAD game line for Mafia.
Yeah.
Like, no one's talking about Mafia.
Right.
No one's like, there's those kind of games. Or like, there's like a fucking like cyberpunk Hunter game, I think, that's about you in like virtual reality. No one's talking about that either.
Yeah.
But like, some carry through. But like, there are just a bunch of game line stuff for WAD that was written to just be a one-off thing, which does make it really hard for anyone else coming after, because they're like, well, now what the fuck do we do? This shit ended.
Yeah, because like, if I look at Pathfinder, for instance, Pathfinder 1st edition, 2nd edition, totally different games. The vibe is different, mechanically speaking. the world is kind of the same, but also different because mechanics, mechanics inform narrative, right? What a character is capable of tells how the world generally works. So in older games, when there were much like getting a bonus, like getting a +1 masterwork sword in first edition, right, was a lot more of a thing and a lot more like in this world, there's not just magic weapons floating around everywhere. In order to even enchant a weapon, it needs to be a masterwork quality in the first place. And then you need to take the effort to enchant that weapon to give it additional benefits. But second edition, we have our +1 rune, then our +2 rune, then our +3 rune, and then the striking rune, greater striking rune, major striking rune. And that's baked into the overall balancing design for the game. It's like an expectation that your characters get the appropriate striking runes as you increase. So what happens is, in the narrative, it feels like magic weapons are everywhere because you kill a bandit, like a bandit captain or a bandit guy from like some small out middle of nowhere place, and he has a +1 greatsword, and it's just like throws it in the pile of +1 weapons that your group has caught up until this point. It just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
So it's complicated, and there's two sides. I have two halves. There's two wolves. One really likes the gameplay and the idea of tabletop. A tabletop game. The point of making a setting, making a game, and that's the role to play in. And the other one is, I love the through thread. That's a different word I'm looking for. The thread that kind of connects different stories and settings and iterations and additions together. And they've done some interesting stuff like that. Like D&D had the Spell Plague, which was a really interesting thing, mostly in 4th edition, which we saw how that happened, but the Spell Plague was very interesting lore-wise.
I thought Spell Plague is... I mean, it's the only lore point for D&D I've heard and I actually thought was kick-ass.
Yeah, it's very cool. And we have all these kind of points, right, where I like these two things. They're both like appealing to me, but I understand as someone who can comprehend both wolves that sometimes games get in their way when they're trying to do cool new stuff because it conflicts with one of the wolves, and it's very hard to appease both wolves at the same time.
Oh yeah, like, don't get me wrong here, because I have my stance on Demon, because I think Demon as a game is just, I think it is an exception to some other ideas and principles I have, because I got my two wolves too. I got my artsy fartsy wolf that is very much about like the human spirit of creation, and that sometimes a well is gone dry, and that's okay, and
yeah,
we should
the ephemeral
always
nature of art.
Exactly. I'm very much like that. I am a very much of everything that a human creates with emotion is art. That's the definition. And then the other wolf, which is, I want for tabletop, my only standard is that people are having fun with the medium. And if that means we get more games, we get more stuff, hell yeah. Even if I don't like 6th edition, I will be happy if there are people out there who are having fun with it. Like, I'm not a particular huge fan of 5e, but I'm happy 5e is enjoyed. And those two wolves are in conflict pretty often, because one is very wishy-washy, artsy, the other one is very, I think, practical, and very much relied around, like, the economics of it.
Right.
And, like, my actual stance for, like, more for Demon, my nuanced more take of it, I hope it doesn't happen. I'd be happier if they took it and pivoted into a spiritual successor. But if we actually did get a Demon the Fallen 6e, I would, at the end, shrug and be like, damn, that's not what I would have done, but what can you do? As long as people like it.
Well, yeah, it'd be weird if it was anything more than that, to be fair.
I think getting emotionally angry at some of that stuff is a little silly. Like, yeah. I don't think it's that serious. I'm a grown man. But, like, yeah, that's my real reaction would be if they did do 6e. It would be a damn, I hope it's good. Because, like, I think there is that stake of, I would like Demon fans to be happy and feel like, oh, fuck yeah, the thing I really like. Maybe it'll actually be a little less janky this time.
Yeah, because, you know, a strange thought occurred to me when you were having your talk and talking about all this stuff, and, you know, it's a bizarre thought to me, but because Pathfinder, or not Pathfinder, Anima's second edition has been kind of like in this limbo of like kind of in the works, kind of not in the works. And I was excited for it because I'd love to see more from Anima. But now, with your argument, I'm kind of like, damn, I kind of wish it'd be more of a spiritual successor to Anima, like a whole new thing.
I would love to see what that team would make differently. I would love to see a different setting, like, because the ideas of Anima are so interesting. I would love to see a pivot into a different genre. Like,
I don't know about genre, but definitely different settings.
Some fantasy setting. Like, I'm thinking, like, yeah, sure, if we want to go, like, the high fantasy route, what is their dark fantasy vibe setting? What would that be like? Fucking, it's an absolute curveball. What would they make a Weird West setting like? Like, how... Like, I want to see that touch, because Anima as something is just so creative, and when you look at it as a fantasy thing, it's kind of fun in a refreshing way of like, fuck, man, like, this isn't influenced by all the normal fantasy tropes. It's just so different. Like, to that extent, I want to see it. I would hate to see, like, let's make Anima, and maybe it is like a legitimate fixing of all the problems that Anima has, but I think to some extent Anima 2 would be like, it's just the weirdness of Anima is what makes it really, really special. I would love to see what the next idea is. Yeah,
it won't feel like old Anima, even if they made it better, right? They won't feel like old Anima, and like, it's such a weird feeling because like I can see me feeling that way, like, dang, they fixed a lot of things here, but it just feels different, and I can't say why. And I don't think it's because like I'm married to the jank or anything. I think it's just,
it's a culmination of just what the game is. Like, it's not even just like I need this one aspect for it to feel Anima, but like,
I don't think so. I think it's just my like experience with it that really just tells that experience, right? Where, because we just talked about how in Pathfinder 2nd edition the world changed by some simple mechanic. In Anima, it'd be the same thing. Like, the mechanics would change, and thus the context of the world changes with it, and it would just feel different even if they kept everything else the same. And I'm also going to say Anima's setting is perfect as is. I hope no new stuff comes out for the story. Well, okay, a bunch of new stuff has come out for the story in the video games, and I hate it, so I'm going to ignore that they exist, because I think the actual books, what they present, that world, everything, is the perfect example of what a TTRPG should be, where it feels like stuff is happening in the world, but it hasn't happened quite yet, and the players are at this like at this flashpoint in time where everything is going to start changing, because that's why I base my entire Anima campaigns off of, pretty much.
I think that's a great point, because like there's a lot of settings for games where it's like you got your meta plots, you got your whatever, but everything is set up in a way that like if something's going to happen, it's as if you as the GM are changing the status quo, or like you as a GM are introducing something new. But as a setting, in Anima, everything feels like it's just in a state of like everything's changing, everything is moving to some point. It's not all moving to the same exact point.
Yeah, there's a lot of different
there's something going on, something that is kind of pushing, and it feels like a world in a state of change that you as players might see the apex of. Which is such a great setup.
Yeah, and that's what I think more settings should be like. I think honestly,
100%.
One of the reasons why I never got into Galarian as much as I could, it wasn't like that. It's a whole world that felt too stable, and there wasn't like it. It's hard to feel special in a world where all the special things you could do just technically exist everywhere else. Where Anima felt like whatever the characters were doing was pushing the envelope of the setting. Like,
I feel like,
go ahead.
Like on that point, it's what I'm saying about the what Matt Stone, Trey Parker say about the and then, or the therefore because. Like Galarian is, there's the Egypt city, and then there's the tech barbarian country, and then the vampire town, but then you go to like Anima, and there's a new empress. Because of the new empress and the way the regime is changing, the Azure Alliance is gaining in strength, Therefore, and you could go on that route for like a long time. Everything feels like it's reacting on one point to the other rather than micro things in kind of a stasis bubble of like what each area is.
Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting conversation. We were talking about Gen Con, and then we kind of just talked about additions and like the nature of changing TTRPGs and everything.
I think it's an important discussion, to be honest.
Is.
Like, it's something that just additions, you should approach it like a new take in a new game entirely. Is it see what, like, how the game's changed, see how it's adapted. I think it is a worse fate to ask that every single game edition be a carbon copy of the one before with a couple changes.
Yeah,
because I don't want to be D&D. I want my games to try new things and explore.
Yeah, and I'm glad that a lot of TTRPGs are coming out now that are not just D&D.
Yeah, thank fuck.
Because I gotta say, one of my biggest disappointments was Cosmere being just so close to D&D. Like, not exactly. There's some things I liked, but it's just too much D&D. And like, I can imagine someone finding Cosmere and making it like being their first TTRPG experience and absolutely loving it because of, you know, the nuance and the change and the stimulus, right, that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
But as someone who has played D&D, it just can't. It just can't. It feels too much like half D&D and half what Plotweaver was going for.
Yeah, like, the part that disappoints me the most with it is, like, it has such a killer team of games people have worked on, and, like, games that really feel interesting and different. And then Brotherwise, who is a company I would argue are really interesting with the decisions they make in a lot of games. Like, a lot of their a Brotherwise game, I think, feels different from a lot of other board games you might find. Because there's just ways that they interact with their games that feel fun and different. And when you play a game that then doesn't feel like that, it feels like there's a lot of potential there that just was ignored for probably like more marketability. And that's sad.
I don't know. I think that's from a perspective of someone who doesn't play a bunch of board games, because I'll tell you, Brotherwise hasn't necessarily pushed the envelope in board game design either. So
yeah, it is someone who mainly sees like Brotherwise doing interesting things surface level that are just like, instead of dice we use tiles, and I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, go off, do tiles, like, that's fun. Like, it's more what it is, like,
right.
It is that stance of, I think for a company that does try fun, interesting, weird things, them going with the status quo is disappointing.
Yeah,
but also based
as
off
much
the
as they
dev
did
team.
Go with the status quo, but yeah,
that's the part I'm less into.
Right. And yeah, and I'm a lot of games. You know, honestly, I'm now sad. I'm so sad because talking about new stimulus and everything. That's what Legend in the Mist was for me. That new stimulus that, like, oh, I didn't realize games could be played this way before, and now I'm never gonna get it again with another game like Legend in the Mist.
Unless someone does something absolutely crazy.
It has to be so fundamentally different. Like, if it uses tags for power in the same way, it's just gonna feel like Legend in the Mist but different. Like, I can enjoy other games in Legend in the Mist. I'm already not playing Legend in the Mist in the initial setting or like design idea of the creators of the game. But no game's gonna hit like Legend in the Mist again with the same kind of systems that it has, which makes me sad. I'll still enjoy a lot of games, and I really hope that new games using the Mist engine or something similar come out, because I really think we need more context. Like I mentioned earlier, for those who didn't watch the early part of the stream, even though Daggerheart stole the Ennies, Legend of the Mist came second in almost every of the same categories besides like best product, which Legend of Adventures came out with best product for Crooked Moon, followed by Daggerheart. But like every other category, like best game, best rules, all this kind of stuff, Legend of the Mist was second place, always second place. So like I think there's a lot of promise in the engine, and I want more games like it, because in all honesty, there are now only certain kinds of games and certain kinds of stories that I can play using the Legend of the Mist system, because everything else would feel wrong. It would feel too gamey, or it'd feel like, oh, the Pathfinder version of, you know, JoJo's Bizarre Adventures or something, which just wouldn't hit the same. But Legend of the Mist, it feels very unique, very different, and very, very fun.
I think it's the fun thing we talked about. Like I keep thinking about it. Like we were just all hanging out, gaming, chatting, tabletop stuff. It was TableTalk, but without a stream going on.
Yeah, we were just playing games. Yeah.
Yeah, like the there's a part I liked that the point we were making when I found a homebrew JoJo's Bizarre Adventure system and I was reading through it. And the takeaway was, this gameplay itself, like just the dice and how the rules are interacting, might feel more like JoJo's, but it kind of is that question of like, do you want the gameplay part of it to feel like JoJo, or for the allowance to do JoJo things in a much more open way? Like, because that Legend of the Mist has both of them. When I look at both games, I'm like, there's an equal decision I'm making here. It's just, how do I want to feel like I am playing this thing? In which direction do I want to go? Something that is tailor-made for the setting and system to operate, or something that is able to work with it like fucking phenomenally. It just like in its very open contextual based format. Like, which version do you want? I don't think there's a full right answer to it, but like,
yeah,
I like that there's a decision I have to make in that instance, because I still think I would run with Legend of the Mist for JoJo, because I think it will just operate smoother for a game system that, for a setting that would add so much insane bullshit that when I'm reading through the tabletop game, I'm like, these are cool ideas, but yeah, this sounds like a lot to track.
And it just sounds like something that's made to be a lot more structured than what JoJo's really is. Like,
it's like really structured, and then in some places it's not. It's like Mage of the Ascension. It's like, it's really like set up and structured until it isn't, and then it's like it shrugs. It's like, I don't know, here's power equivalents, go crazy.
It always feels very jarring when stuff like that happens, because it's like it gives you a step by step, and then there's no steps for a while, and then there's steps further down the road, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll just die because I don't know how to translate this next part based on the context of what the system provided to me before. I don't know. I mean, like, Legend of the Mist is for people like me. I keep saying it's a game that I think is really good, and I think it is, but it's with the idea that you're someone who likes just gamifying story elements and who likes being creative. If you're a creative type person, Legend of the Mist is definitely a game for you. And if you're someone who prefers a narrative experience built around a board game, then there's games like Pathfinder or D&D or whatever that, you can tell the story and you can do the role play and you can talk to your friends in silly voices, right? But at the end of the day, the game part of it, the part that you actually, success and failure matters based on those rules, feels a lot better than in a game like Legend of the Mist, where sometimes in Legend of the Mist, you realize that a check you just did was short a few extra power points because you didn't tell the story good enough. And that's a unique experience to Legend of the Mist. I love that part. I think that's cool. I like the idea that there's a skill curve for storytelling ability, because I'm a good storyteller. I'm that guy. I
love it in the perspective of like the guy who goes all in on playing a person true to who they are, because I like the part of the game where metagaming or trying to make the strongest build. Power gaming in Legend of the Mist is making a well-rounded human being. But which I love. And then on the second hand, I like the fact that there are times where you have that experience where you're like, fuck, I could have done this and this and this to use these tags. But then you can look at it and be like, but would my character have done that? Like, would they have? And you can look at it and be like, no, in this instance, my character would use the less optimal stuff, because maybe in this moment they're in a panic, in this moment they're doing this. I like a lot of those moments, because it feels very different from... It feels different from like, oh man, I made the inoptimal play in like Pathfinder, my combo, I could have done 10 more damage. And it feels more like the questions you ask are like, is there a way that was more in character that could have suited the situation? And sometimes that lands with you making a choice that gives you more power points and more points to your dice. And sometimes you end up with a few less because your character would react a certain way. I really like how that opens that situation up for you, because I don't think that would happen in a lot of other games.
It also creates this unique scenario of what really happens in life where you hindsight 2020, right? Where
Yeah.
you're doing a thing, you're feeling stressed, you're just going to your, you're going back to your training, you're going back to your common tags that you use for this action every time, and you default, and you mentally default in a way that is just not allowing you to see the full picture. And that happens in real life. People panic, people have these situations where they put the blinders on and they just focus on the task, and they don't utilize everything to their advantage, and so they get a much lesser result. And then afterwards you're like, man, oh, I was so stressed out there, I could have used this tag and this tag and this tag. But like, that's immersion, right? It's just like you were stressed, your character was stressed. And unlike in D&D or Pathfinder, where like you're stressed but you roll the dice and you roll nat 1 or nat 20 and it's just like whatever, in Legend of the Mist is just like you're stressed and you're like, oh, I didn't use this tag that I've been holding on to for a while, dang, my character was in the moment and he just didn't think about it and I didn't think about it, so we were synced up in that moment. And it's cool. I like that. I think that's really interesting. But I completely acknowledge people who like the idea of playing a board game and telling a story around it, because, as Brendan Lee Mulligan said, it's fun to talk in silly voices to your friends and then let the system do your combat for you.
Yeah.
So, I think there's advantages to both ways, but that's gonna be it for us today. There was a good amount of Gencon talk.
I'll say it was like we talked about Gencon related stuff for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
I tracked that.
And then we got into some very interesting, like, it would be hard to have another table talk because I think we covered a lot of the edition stuff conversation in this one go. Maybe in like a year or two, when this conversation is ancient history, it'd be fun to bring up again. But like that's worth a whole video on its own. Like maybe I'll cut that. Maybe I'll cut that out and turn it into a video. I'm not going to, but that would be a good idea. I mean, if I was smart.
That would be like that'd be 2 snips, maybe a couple more. But I think the idea of what is an edition, and also, I mean, it's great. The way I view it is, how do we artistically approach a very commercial product of a tabletop game? Because I fully view tabletop as like it is an art form. I interact with each game as an individual piece of art. That's just because that's who I am.
Mm-hmm. But Alex, anything you want to leave us off with today before we head out?
Yeah, if you like lore content, as really prevalent by the fact that I talked about Demon of the Fallen a bunch, there's a good video that's gonna come out in like a bit. I've been crushing through it. I have like an hour of footage. I feel like it's gonna be like 45 minutes, so a handful of days I'll need a few days. But yeah, go sub to my channel. It's Glue Boy. You'll see a video where I talk about this. Maybe I re-record a little thing. I want to expand on my thoughts, because I end the video talking about I think the game shouldn't get into edition. I want to codify that I think I would like to see a spiritual successor more than anything. Because I think that's something I landed on with this that I think is a very good point. But yeah, go sub to that. I got more videos on the way, so it'll be fun.
As for me, I should learn my lesson and not make promises, because I've said for months now, since probably April, if not sooner, my mom's coming, soon I'll be able to make videos. And then June came around and that didn't happen, and then July came around and that didn't happen, and now August is here and it's probably not gonna happen. Things are stabilizing. My mom is making the process of moving up here. She's just feeling very antsy about leaving stuff in the other house, and she's never gonna feel good until she's completely moved out of the old house, and that's just gonna take time, because it's a half a lifetime of stuff built up, and it's like a 4-hour trip there and a 4-hour trip back, so it's
a lot.
It's a lot. And also, like, just a lot of stuff has been happening in my family. Also, our state is just like on fire, so that's also causing problems. I'll get to it when I can. I really do want to make... I've re-recorded my Legend in the Mist video, because like after a month, I'm like, man, I have new context for the video, and so I remake it, and then I do it again and again. And I do want to cover, I want to cover the changes to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, for instance. Now, Magus and Summoner get more spell slots, which I think is super cool. and some other really good changes. Plus, the new classes are out, Necromancer and Runesmith, so that's also really cool. Also, one of the things keeping my channel afloat, we recently just hit 9.9k subs without me making really any videos, and that's mostly due to people coming from my Lancer content. So, you know, I want to make more Lancer videos for those people, and also make some compilations so people can, you know, watch it all at once. That would be really good too. But, you know, I'm as a full-time parent, I get like 4 hours every other day to do things, so I'm not going to work during that time. I'm going to play video games with my friends and enjoy myself and not worry about it, because even if I did make videos, it wouldn't be worth all the extra stress. So, you know, it'll come when it comes. But with that, I guess we'll go ahead and say goodbye.
See ya.
Bye.